What's going on, everybody? It's Bottom Tier Collector, and I'm your host, The Bearded One, bringing you bottom tier content from Bottom Tier Collector. Although I'm going against that mantra today, got a top tier story, Wolverine #1. Now, I say this quite often, but since my channel grows and I'm meeting new people, I feel compelled to say this quite often. I feel it's important. A lot of people consider this, even comic book stores, consider this run of Wolverine, the long-standing, ongoing series, is Wolverine Volume 1. And to be fair, I understand why this series is labeled as Volume 1. However, there is a 4-issue miniseries prior to this run. And being a Lobo fan and knowing that the 4-issue miniseries Lobo is considered Lobo 1, I like to have a standard across all companies, publishers, and series. So if we're going to call one miniseries a volume of that character, why don't we just stick to it for all miniseries? So Wolverine, the 4-issue miniseries, I lovingly refer to it as Volume 1 because it's important. It's a very integral story to Wolverine, the character, and it shouldn't be overlooked. And this run, which some stores, and I appreciate when stores do this, this run is actually Volume 2, if you would like to call it the first ongoing series of Wolverine. That's fine. It's all semantics anyways, but I think it's important to acknowledge that first 4-issue miniseries as Volume 1. So let's get into it. I don't have a lot of house cleaning today. Just thought I'd read a comic book and do a review for you guys today. Hope you enjoy. So this book takes us immediately into an action scene where we discover this Captain Lee Quan Pen of Legion Airways, an airplane captain, is defending his life. We're not seeing a lot in this first page because it's a splash page. He's defending his life against a bunch of thugs. And as we're progressing into the scene, the way Chris Claremont writes this, we're getting bits and pieces of the story as we're reading. So we don't get everything at once. And there's not a lot of dialogue. Something I can appreciate about this book, it's not paragraph after paragraph I have to read. The book reads pretty fast. And I'll give my opinions a little later about the book. But just wanted to say that because of how it flows. But he's defending the lives of his passengers. As we're reading the scene, we discover that an airplane has crashed, and these thugs, led by a fat, chubby man named Banneper, have come to the scene, and we assume this is a family-friendly comic book, so nothing is shown, but it is implied that these gang of thugs are raping and killing the passengers aboard this plane. Wolverine shows up on the scene, and it's done in it feels very Jet Li, Jackie Chan, like Asian action movie style. Not necessarily American movie style where the hero just bursts onto the scene. We actually see Wolverine crouched behind bushes and kind of stalking his enemies. But then we eventually get the big reveal, the big splash page, and I'll try to put it up here if I can find it, of Wolverine revealing himself to the enemy, and he proceeds to kick butt. And while this is all playing out, Wolverine is narrating more information to us, the readers, and we discover that let me see if I can get this right. Noburo Kojira, I think that's his name. Secretary to Mariko Yoshida. That's an easy name to say because she's very important to Wolverine. If you don't know much about Mariko and Wolverine, before there was Jean Grey, there was Mariko. And Wolverine spent a lot of time in Japan. I'm not well versed in my history of Wolverine, hence why I'm deciding to read my collection now. But Mariko and Wolverine were lovers at one time, and they were supposed to be married at one point or another in Wolverine's publication history. If you'd like to read up more on Wolverine and Mariko's relationship, I just Google it. Maybe discover some arcs with Mariko and Wolverine. And I believe I talked about it just a minute ago. The Wolverine 4-issue miniseries provides a 4-issue arc with Mariko and Wolverine, and it is. I said it before, but I'll say it again. It's a very integral 4-issue miniseries to Wolverine and his history. But back to this story. That's why Wolverine has interest in being here, kicking these thugs' butts. Because you're thinking, why is Wolverine here? You know, he's an X-Men. He's not after thugs. He's after like world dominators. Super villains. But Wolverine's here in Indonesia. And it's because of Noburo, Mariko's personal secretary. As soon as Wolverine heard that the plane went missing and that he was on board, Wolverine showed up on the scene. Well, as the action is sort of dying out, Wolverine's taking care of all but one villain. Wolverine goes over to Noburo, and as Noburo's dying, he tells Wolverine of the Cult of the Black Sword, and that they were here looking for the Muramasa Blade, and he warns Wolverine about the Muramasa Blade, that it can corrupt your soul, and it's very dangerous, and they must not find this blade. And Wolverine lovingly tells Noburo, the sweet man, secretary to his lover, that he will tell Mariko that he died a samurai and lived a good life. And then we're taken back to Wolverine standing off with Banniper. Banniper, being this chubby, overweight guy, it doesn't stand a chance against Wolverine. He's pretty much seen at this point what Wolverine can do. So what does he do? Like any cheap, low-rate villain, he grabs up the nearest female, proceeds to use her as a body shield, and Wolverine is like an action scene. He comes out of some smoke, some fog, and he's just stalking Banniper. You can just see the fear on Banniper. And Banniper luckily gets to a speedboat to make his way away from Wolverine, and he swears to Wolverine he's going to come back with more men and hunt him down. And Wolverine takes solace in the fact that he smelled one of the passengers on board and somehow knew she had a gun. I don't know if he smelled the gun, but that's one of Wolverine's superpowers. Maybe why he's called Wolverine. He can capture the scent of someone and track them very well, and it makes him a really good tracker of people. And he knew one of the passengers was on board with a gun, and surprise, surprise, she opens up one of the doors and shoots Banniper, and justice has been served. None of the bad guys got away. And then we're taken to a scene in, where are we at now? We're at Madripoor. And Madripoor is a location pretty important to the mutants. I think it's an island, and I think it's where, I believe it's where Magneto or maybe Charles Xavier, maybe both of them, tried to set up their first mutant empire. This will come later. This is in 1988, but I think much later in the X-Men's history, we'll see the X-Men try to set up their first safe haven, if you will, in Madripoor. So Madripoor is pretty important, but it doesn't play too much of a part in this issue. We're seeing Wolverine is watching plane after plane come in, because he's waiting for a specific person to come off of a plane, and he's going to follow her. Again, how Chris Claremont writes this story, we're not given everything at once. We have to keep reading to get bits and pieces of information throughout the comic book, which I liked, but we'll get to that in a minute. So Lindsay McCabe, I believe is her name, she steps off the plane, and Wolverine knows it's her. He's supposed to be following her. We also notice that some thugs are following her. and so in us. And while he's tracking Lindsay McCabe, he's ever present to make sure to keep his identity, because apparently the X-Men are supposed to be dead at this point in time in 1988. I don't know what event happened. I'd love to tell you the event that happened. I haven't read any X-Men besides the 1990s Chris Claremont, Jim Lee run, so you have to forgive me on that. But whatever issues of X-Men lead up to Wolverine #1, some of it happens, and I assume they're supposed to be dead. And Wolverine is trying to make sure his cover's not blown. This is his patch gimmick with the dressed up clothes and the fedora and the eye patch. If you're reading Wolverine Volume 7, which is out on shelves now, I think there's an issue or two where Wolverine returns as Patch in one of the issues. So you should be familiar, if you're reading current Wolverine, who Patch is. It's just an alias of Wolverine. But back to the book, Wolverine, in an effort to get the thugs off of Lindsay McCabe, he secretly just slashes one of the tires, indiscreetly, and walks off. So we're thinking, Lindsay got away, Wolverine didn't get his cover blown, and he's telling Lindsay McCabe. And when Lindsay McCabe gets to her room, she's been set up. It's a trap. The cult of the Black Blade. We assume it's the cult of the Black Blade. We don't know for sure who these people are, but they're accusing her of being a courier of the Muramasa Blade. It's pretty easy. I don't think they call it the Muramasa Blade. I think they call it the Sword or the Black Sword. But putting two and two together, it's not hard to see. They're after the Muramasa Blade, and the reason why Lindsay McCabe is being accused of this, she seems to be important. Her roommate is Jessica Drew. Jessica Drew talked to who she believed is Nairobi, the gentleman that died in Indonesia in Wolverine's arms. She was tricked by whoever was imitating Nairobi on the phone with Jessica Drew. And that's how I assume the cult of the Black Blade got wind that Lindsay McCabe could be the courier of this sword. But Wolverine steps in before Lindsay McCabe is harmed and kicks in the door like an action hero and kicks butt, dispatches of the villains. Lindsay McCabe has no idea who Wolverine is, yet she's aware of a Wolverine, actually Wolverine with the claws, the X-Man. But he's still trying to pose as Patch. So he doesn't pull out the claws. In fact, I'm not sure he kills these people because he's still under disguise. Now that I'm remembering the book properly. He even gets held at gunpoint and decides to let this dragon lady, as he calls her, have the upper hand. And then Lindsay McCabe comes to his aid with a lamp and brings it right over the girl's head. And then that's when we're explained about Jessica Drew and the phone conversation with one of these cult members impersonating Nairobi. And that's kind of where we're left off at, is discovering, oh no, Jessica Drew's on her way with the sword. Unbeknownstly, she's going to be set up into a trap. And that's where we're left up. That's the end of the issue. Overall, I liked it. Did I love it? Not really, and I was hoping to love it. But it served its purpose. And I like Chris Claremont's writing style, where he doesn't give you everything at the beginning. You're not spoon-fed the story. I had to reread some of the Indonesia part to understand and fully digest that it was a plane crash, that the thugs were there because of Nairobi. I had to read it twice to really fully comprehend what I was reading, just because of the way Chris Claremont writes, and then because I don't want to say I was power reading through it, but the book reads kind of fast, and I needed time to kind of mull over what was going on. But I still enjoyed the way Chris Claremont wrote this. I mean, all praise to Chris Claremont, legend in the industry. I've met the guy. He's autographed 4 of my comic books. Very humble man. So no knock on his writing style. It made me want to read each page, made me want to get to the next page where I couldn't get to it fast enough, because just the way he writes and throws little bitty pieces at you per page. I didn't love the art. This isn't, my favorite art style. My favorite artist of all time is Val Semix. Phil Jimenez. But on a rainy day, if I'm in a Val Semix mode, maybe I could convince myself I like Val Semix a little more. But I love Val Semix and I love Phil Jimenez. Both almost equally. And so my favorite art style is pretty much 90s, the 90s imagery. And this is right before that. It's definitely still Copper Age. A little more old school in my opinion, but I like it. I like the retro feel of the comic. I like the retro feel of the art. One thing that really impressed me had nothing to do with the story or the art. It was the comic book material. The comic book felt sturdy. The pages felt thick. It's like really thick newsprint. It didn't feel like it was going to be easy. And I was babying my book. I wasn't like, doing all that with my book. But it felt like as long as I respected my book, it wasn't going to just like crumple for no reason. And I really liked that. It makes me miss the old way comic books used to be made. And I would love for every comic book to be made of the same material as Wolverine #1. If you own Wolverine #1 and you've never touched it, I know it's painful for a lot of you guys out there to touch your comic books, but I would encourage you, flip it. If you're not a big reader or you've already read the story, I would just encourage you to hold it in your hands, feel it, maybe flip some pages, and you'll understand what I'm saying. It's very sturdily built as a comic book. As far as any, pre-protective gloss covering that they put on pages now that DC was doing for a long time in the New 52. And overall, just great story, great first issue, got me hooked. Again, is it the greatest single issue of all time? Definitely not. I wouldn't even put it in the top 10. But it did its job as a first issue to get me invested. Now, I think I may go ahead and continue on into Wolverine issue 2. And we'll see where it goes from there. Maybe Chris Claremont will hook me so much that this whole review series might run through a number of Wolverine issues. We'll have to see. If you'd like to see me, this is something I've been considering. I told myself 10 years ago when I completed Wolverine Volume 2, this volume, I was going to actually read it. And so if you would like for me to do that, I've already covered Wolverine 75, but I'd love to read it again. If you would like for me to cover the entire Volume 2 in review format, I think it would be fun at least to do 15, 20 issues at least before we get on to something else. But I'm willing and open to do that if you guys are interested in that. So leave a comment if you'd like to see me cover Wolverine Volume 2, and we can read it. I don't want to say read it together, but you can follow along with my reviews of the series, and hopefully it'll be fun, and we can learn more about Wolverine together. That'll do it for this time, guys. As always, thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting. Before I get off here, there's been a little drama with Brian LCS and his Comic Book Community Awards, and I just want to take a quick second to say, who cares? Honestly, Brian is just having fun with these awards. He's trying to get the word out, and he's trying to be fair. He's trying to just celebrate the community, is what these awards are about. So, if it's that deep to you, just pull back, take a deep breath. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. I mean, if I never get nominated for a Comic Book Community Award, it might be better for me and what I'm trying to get out of YouTube, which is a personal connection with people. It's just not that big of a deal. All this channel growth, unless you're really planning to hammer down and go to YouTube full time and make a living off YouTube, the channel growth will just come. And it's really not that, if your end goal is not to do YouTube full time and make a living, make an actual substantial income off YouTube, it really doesn't matter how much your channel grows, at the end of the day, when you think about it. And what really matters in life is making personal connections with people and having fun doing what you love doing. And that's why I'm here on YouTube. That's why I thank you guys for the comments, the subscription, because I'm here to interact with you guys, and I'm here to make friends, and I'm here to geek out about stuff that I geek out about already. And I hope to see more of you guys just enjoying yourselves in this community and not taking it so serious. Just let Brian do what Brian does. And if you get nominated or you don't get nominated, or you get an award or you don't get an award, it really doesn't matter. And again, just let your channel do what your channel's gonna do. If you're not in it for the money, if you're not in it to quit your day job, which maybe I'd be lying if I said none of us fantasize about doing this full time. It would be a dream job to be able to make enough money to do this full time. But be realistic and just. I've said this in my veteran advice video. Just block out the negative noise and just do you. And I want to encourage you all, as I actually get off camera, just do you. Have fun doing what you're doing on YouTube if you are a content creator. And I'll see you guys next time.